Okay. So now let's move on with the next topic, which is load data in a Microsoft into a Microsoft Fabric data warehouse. So first, let's try to understand extract, transform, and load (ETL), which provides the foundation for data analytics and data warehouse work streams. Okay, so let's review some of its aspects. Okay, so first, if we discuss about data extraction, so it involves connecting to the source system and collecting necessary data for analytical processing. Then data transformation. So it involves a series of steps which is performed on the extracted data to convert it into the standard format. And combining data from different tables like cleaning data, deduplicating data, and performing data validations as well. Now, if we talk about data loading, so the extracted and transformed data are loaded into the fact and dimension tables. And for an incremental load, this involves periodically applying ongoing changes as per the requirement. So, this process often involves reformatting the data to ensure its quality and compatibility with the data warehouse schema. Then, after that, we have post load optimization. So, once the data is loaded, certain optimizations can be performed to enhance the performance of the data warehouse. Okay. Now, when we talk about data ingestion or extraction, which moves the raw data from various sources into a central repository, which is called a staging location. And you may have to build and work with the auxiliary objects that involved in a load operations, such as table, stored procedure, and functions. So these auxiliary objects are commonly referred to as staging, and staging objects act as temporary storage and transformation areas. So they can share resources with the data warehouse or live in its own storage area. Staging serves as an abstraction layer, simplifying and facilitating the load operation to the final tables in the data warehouse. Also, the staging area provides a buffer that can help to minimize the impact of the load operations on the performance of the data warehouse. So, this is important in environments where the data warehouse needs to remain operational and responsive during the data loading process. Now, there are two types of data load to consider when loading a data warehouse. First one is full load, and other one is incremental load. So, the process of populating the data warehouse for the first time is full or initial load. Here, all the tables are truncated and reloaded, and the old data is lost. It may take longer to complete due to the amount of data being handled, but it is easier to implement as there is no history preserved. And this method is typically used when setting up a new data warehouse or when a complete refresh of the data is required. Other data load type is incremental load. So this is a process of updating the data warehouse with the changes since the last update. Here, the history is preserved and tables are updated with new information. It takes less time than initial load, and but the implementation is more complex than the initial load. So this method is commonly used for regular updates to the data warehouse, such as daily or hourly updates, and it requires mechanisms to track changes in the source data since the last load. Now, here we can create the tables with T-SQL, and for that either we can use SQL Server Management Studio or we can use Microsoft Fabric Service Portal. So we can while creating the tables with T-SQL statement, we can use copy statement which serve as a main method for importing data into the warehouse, and it also facilitates efficient data ingestion from an external storage Azure storage account. So basically this copy statement, it offers flexibility, allowing you to specify the format of the source file, designate a location for storing rows that are rejected during the import process, skip header rows, among other configurable options. And the option to store rejected rows separately is useful for data cleaning and quality control. So basically, it allows you to easily identify and investigate any issues with the data that were not successfully imported. And to connect to an Azure storage account, you need to use either shared access signature or storage account key. All right. Now, to load the dimension table, so think of a dimension table as the who, what, where, when, why of your data warehouse. And when we talk about the slowly changing dimensions, so it change over time, but at a slow pace and unpredictably. Okay, so for example, a customer's address in a retail business. Okay, so when a customer move their address changes, and if you overwrite the old address with the new one, you lose the history. But if we want to analyze historical sales data, we might need to know where the customer lived at the time of each sale. So this is where SCD comes into play. And there are several types of slowly changing dimensions in a data warehouse. And so there are type 1, type 2. These are the most frequently used. So let's discuss all these slowly changing dimension one by one. Okay. So let's talk about type 0 SCD. So the dimension, this here, the dimension attribute never changes as mentioned. Okay. In type 1 SCD, it overrides existing data and does not keep the history. Then with type 2 SCD, it add new records for changes and it keep full history for a given natural key. Then in type 3 SCD, history is added as a new column. In type 4 STD, a new dimension is added. In type 5, when certain attributes of a large dimension change over time, but using type 2 is not feasible due to the dimension's large size. Then type 6 SCD, so it's a combination of type 2 and type 3. So let's have a look on the example. So when, as we know, in type 2 SCD, when a new version of same element is brought to the data warehouse, the old version is considered expired and the new one becomes active. So here we have example of how to update the uh, a table dim product. Okay, and here we can see that how can we update type 2 SCD. Okay, you can have a look on the query. All right. Now loading the fact table. So fact table is the how much of your data warehouse serving as the numerical stage for measurable quantities. It stores the metrics of business events, linking dimension to quantifiable data for analysis. So let's consider an example where we load a sales fact table in data warehouse, and this table contains sales transaction data with columns such as fact key, date key, product key, order ID, quantity, price, and load time. Okay, so assume we have a source table, order underscore detail, and in an OLTP system with columns like order ID, order date, product ID, quantity, and price. Okay, so the T-SQL script, that is the example which is given here, it loads the fact sales table. All right, so you can have a look on it. Now we can also load the data with Fabric pipeline. So Microsoft Fabric's warehouse, it provides integrated data ingestion tool, and it enable user to load and ingest data into the warehouse on large scale, either through coding or no coding experience. So here pipeline offer many different activities for orchestrating the data movement. Okay, however, the most common use for loading data into a warehouse will be copy data and possibly schedule parameters and delete data, which also depend on the load type. Okay, so this is loading the data with T-SQL, and we already have talked about this, that we can use copy statement. All right, and this copy statement basically it serve as the main method for importing data into a data warehouse. It facilitates efficient data ingestion from an external Azure storage account. It offers flexibility and allow you to specify the format of the source file, designate a location for storing rows that are rejected during the import process, skip header rows, among other configurable options. So the option to store rejected rows separately is useful for cleaning the data and quality control, and it allows you to easily identify and investigate any issues with the data that were not successfully imported. Okay, so the option to use different kind of storage account for error file location, okay, allows for better error handling and debugging, and it makes it easier to isolate and investigate any issue that occur during the data loading process. So error file only applies to CSV. Okay, and the ability to specify the wildcard and multiple files in the storage location path, it allows the copy statement to handle bulk data load efficiently. And this is also useful when dealing with the large data set distributed, which is distributed across multiple files. So now let's move ahead. Okay, so you can load the data from various items in a workspace, such as other warehouses and lakehouses. So, in a scenario where an analyst needs data from both a warehouse and a lakehouse, they can use this feature to combine the data. They can then load this combined data into the warehouse for analysis. And this feature is useful when data is distributed across many assets in a workspace. So, all the warehouses that share the same workspace are integrated into the same logical SQL server. And if you use a SQL client tool, such as SQL Server Management Studio, you can easily perform a cross database query like in any SQL Server instance. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so once the data is imported, you can start authoring your data flow, and you might decide to clean your data, reshape, remove columns, and create new ones. So all the steps that you perform are saved. Okay, now transform the data with Copilot. So Copilot can be a valuable tool for assisting with the data flow transformation. Let's say we have a gender column that contain male and female, and we want to transform it. So the first step is to activate the Copilot within your data flow. Okay, and once that's done, you can then provide specific instruction on the transformation you want to perform. Okay, so for instance, you might input the command like transform the gender column if male 0, if female 1. Okay, so and then convert it to integer. So this way, you can do that. Now, with the add data destination feature, you can separate your ETL logic and destination storage, and more maintainable. This separation basically it lead to the cleaner and more maintainable code, and it can make it easier to modify either the ETL process or the storage configuration without affecting the other. So when you select a warehouse as a destination, you can uh, choose different update methods like append to add the new row to an existing table, or replace to replace the entire content of a table with a new set of data. Okay, so with that, we are done with our topic of loading data in Microsoft Fabric Data Warehouse. All right. All right. Now let's move on